Hey y'all, welcome back. We are diving into part two of my story of coming out and how I have left the church. Now, in my last video, we didn't go over all the details because there's some pieces that I feel like are missing into understanding my relationship within the church community at that time and how it was beginning to separate and become a clear line for me and understanding in my internal world what I am beginning to believe and what I am beginning to understand at that point in time. And so in this video, I feel like we'll get more into those details. So I want to preface with saying again that there are going to be some challenging things we're going to talk about in this video, especially. So, at any point, if you feel like, whew, that's a lot, I want you to pause and I want you to breathe through it. I don't want you to force if your internal emotions or if your internal body is just like, whoa, that's a lot. I don't expect you to force yourself to watch through this like you would a movie and you want to see the end. You can absolutely pause and come back to this whenever you're ready. So, in this video, we are going to talk about um, basically the aftermath and my experience of coming out and how that affected family members, friends, my work life, who I worked with, and basically what life looked like for me about 6 months to a year after I came out. So, I also want to mention that I am currently working on an art project at the same time of telling you this story. So, my eyes are not always going to be looking straight at you. But if you want, you can join me in doing an art project. I'm currently working on my own manifestation board, and it brings me joy to do this and talk to you at the same time. So, join me, watch, listen to me while you're doing chores or whatever you may be doing. It's currently a Sunday for me. So on Sundays, I take time to just follow my joy in the world of crafts, the world of art, the world of creating, so I can give my mental brain, my solving brain time to just hang out, drink a cup of coffee, have a snack, whatever that is, and I am going to just sit here and create. So you might hear me gluing, you might hear me cutting paper. I have gone through like 6 magazines so that I can work on creating this project, which has turned into probably multiple layouts of a manifestation board. So it's now becoming a more massive collage than I anticipated. I'm currently working on my second, like, I think this is like a 24 by 18 size of paper, roughly. So now I'm on my second one. So if that kind of gives you an understanding of like where I'm at. Anyway, that's beside the point. So we left off in this story where I had just finished having this group session with my sister's salon, and we all moved into a year of growth and a year of change. So this is walking into the year of 2021. Yeah, walking into the year of 2021. Some of the dates are going to be kind of foggy. So I'm going to do my best, but for the most part, I just want to share my experience with you. And if there's anyone out there, if you're watching this at any point in time, to hear my story, and hopefully this will help your subconscious if you haven't come out yet. And like we know, there's multiple layers to coming out. It's not just coming out to yourself or friends or family. There's for a lot of us, maybe some of us, maybe not all of us, we have to come out multiple times at different parts of our life because not everybody believes like you and I, like that. And especially if you're coming out of a religious institution, then more than likely where you came from, they didn't believe that it was okay, safe, or allowed to embrace who you are in your sexuality by not being straight. So I hope that this story just gives you another proof or another like proof outside of yourself that when you come out, that the possibility for you can look different than the fears in the brain. And obviously, the fear and the ego is there to keep us safe. So don't do anything where you're like, oh, I can't do that. Like, these things take time, and it's okay that it takes time. So, um, let's dive into part two of this story. Woo! I'm getting a little sweaty as I'm talking already, because when I speak, I get really warm and hot. It's weird. Whatever, I'm white as fuck. I can see in the camera. It is what it is. All right, join me in the craft world. Let's do this. Okay, so we are in the part of the story where we just had that group session, right? Okay, so I can remember, let's see. I had just come out to my sister and my group of people that I work with, and I remember feeling scared to share my story with my best friend at that time. So I am not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention who. I'm going to keep the information as private as possible, but also share my experience. And I can only share my experience. Um, and the people on the other side of that experience had their own. So when I share what I share and how I share it, it all comes from a place of love and a place of growth. And by no means am I perfect, and I'm not going to say everything perfectly, but I am going to do my best. Because I'm not going to be shaming. I'm not going to be like condoning or saying other people were wrong. But I am just going to share what happened for me and how it happened, and to the best of my remembrance. So, um, let's see. With my best friend at the time, we were really close and we did a lot of life together. We, so to give some backstory, and because the first few people in telling my coming out story were really important to me. And so I did a lot of work in the background to regulate my nervous system, to talk to the people who could encourage me and how to navigate that because it was a very new thing for me. And so once I finally felt confident enough and safe enough to share who I was and where I was at on that journey, because I didn't have all the answers, I then reached out to my best friend at the time to say, hey, like, I'd love to like go hang out, but I don't think I preface with like, I have something important to tell you. So anyway, this person and why I wanted to tell them was because we had lived so much life up to that point. Up to that point in my life, there was a portion of my life where I worked at a nonprofit and we were both in that world together. I worked there and they were a volunteer. And so we saw each other a lot and we bonded over a breakup where I had experienced all the red flags through it, didn't see it until after I got out of that relationship. It was a relationship with a man, and at that point in my life, I was just like kind of figuring things out, what I liked, what I didn't. And sexually, I thought I wanted to be with a man, but later come to find out, no. But that portion of being in that relationship with that man, helped me figure out what I didn't like and what I didn't wanted, what I did not want. And it also taught me that I want to be cherished and not just loved for who I was, but I learned that I didn't want to just be a housewife. I didn't just want to like be stuck in a home. Like those were the beginning stages of understanding myself as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman. But that's another conversation. And it was not a beautiful relationship by any means, or one full of love and kindness. It was more just like, I really like you. I want to see where this goes. But as soon as we got into it, they were mm, like more of an abandonment um connection. It was like once we had a connection, it was like, oh, maybe for them it was like this is too good to be true, but I haven't really dove into that relationship yet with my counselor. Probably will down the line. Um, I don't know what the word is, but it was like this trying to love a rock, literally. It's like, yeah, your body might be able to do these biologically when we're intimate, but other than that, it's like having to beg for you to love me. And it took that experience to understand that why the fuck would I beg someone to love me? And why do I feel like it's only you that could ever do that? I think part of that mindset definitely came from religion and from my upbringing of like, you have to find a man, you have to marry, and it can only ever be one, and just this very limiting relational like culture that was taught to me and how to want and how to live and what to desire. The desiring factor really wasn't there because I was so shut off from my body. I was so disconnected from my body. It took years to reconnect, and I'm still reconnecting and understanding. I don't know if I will ever not, but it's definitely at a much healthier place than it was previously. So at that time, I was in my early 20s, and all I knew was my religion, and that the only thing that felt right and like the safe move was working at a nonprofit, which I worked my ass off. I worked so fucking hard. There were like 12-hour days easily, especially in the summers, and I only got paid like $7.50. And I didn't even have health insurance. I had it under my parents, but eventually because the I don't know if this is for everywhere, but like once you hit like 21 and after, you get kicked off your parents' insurance. So I was in limbo with health insurance and navigating being overworked, underpaid, being one of the only females who worked so fucking hard. It almost felt like I had to prove myself that I could work as hard as a man and more. And I would do everything that they did, hard work, lifting, moving. My God, there were so many random ass shit that would come up in working in a nonprofit, like moving vehicles, moving carpet, wet ass, dirty carpet that's full of possible viruses and bacteria, and working in very unhealthy, very unsafe buildings, surroundings, people. It was all not good. But it was all under these rose-colored glasses of like, we're serving the people and we're teaching them about God and how we're gonna break these cycles together because that's what was repeated back to us through all these multiple layers of religion and what was taught to us, not just from the pulpit, but pretty much from white males. And those white males reading from multiple different Bibles, as you and I know, those things have been reworded, new editions, every fucking year there's always a brand new Bible. And it is so far removed from the original place of which it came from. Now, I'm not going to dive into all of that, but basically, what I was working in and how life was lifing at that point was basically very self-sacrificial and from a place of teaching because this is what Jesus would do. Life, mindset, and it was pretty shitty. And that's probably one of the root places in my life of why I am dealing with chronic illness now because I worked in such hard conditions, in such challenging times, especially as being a woman. Yes, I recognize I have different privileges as a white individual, but as a single woman not being married in her beginning 20s, if I did work like a man, it was like, "Oh my God, why are you doing that?" Well, nobody fucking else was. Anyway, I worked way too hard for that job. So, moving on, my friend and I were in this realm together, is where we began to have a relationship as friends and where we began connecting. The topics we were connecting over was about this guy. And so we would hang out, we would talk about the things that were so fucked up about him and just trauma bonding. We were just trauma bonding. And I would support her in ways of like just listening to what she had to say and honestly just listening. And she would listen to me in what I had to say in recognizing things that were just terrible and how angry we were and how frustrated we were that we allowed ourselves to have a relationship with that individual. And who also I feel like I should mention was, and this feels really embarrassing to say, but I was and we were both in a relationship with this individual at different times, I must say, at different times, um, who also was a felon. And a lot of times in this location, where we worked in this nonprofit, or I worked in this nonprofit, those individuals could do community work and get, like, I don't really know how it worked in the background of things logistically, but basically it helped move things along in their sentence. And I think to get maybe time off, or maybe that was part of what they had to do, was to do community service. So I don't know what the rule was or what the like punishment was or whatever, but that's all I know. We never got into the details as to why. Um, all I was ever told was that, this is something that happened and this is what I did. Um, and that was it. And it was just left at that. Nothing else was talked about it. It was like very taboo and they were very ashamed of it. So I can understand why they didn't want to give the details, but in my brain, I, as an individual who was very much in the mindset and obviously in the religious mindset of like, well, Jesus loves you, so I will too. And it was like I completely forgot all that. And I had no idea any of the red flags to look for or that, hey, um, we should think about this. We should really think about this before moving forward. But anyway, so we both bonded over this relationship, my friend and I, a relationship that we got into both separately at different times, but with the same person. And so, um, over time, we just started to hang out more. I was also still at this time while I was in college. Yeah, before 2021, I was in college, and so during our friendship, a lot of it, she was in college or I was in college. And so there were times when we would be hanging out late at night, like going to get food or just talking, going shopping, or like going to eat at Whataburger, stuff like that. And just like hang out, talk, and we just talked a lot. That was a lot of our relationship, just talking about um deep things. And we had a lot of questions, I remember. And we would just sit with those and be like, this doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense. What do you think about that? We never really tried to come from a place of trying to solutionize the problem right away or put a solution on it. But we would just like sit with it. And we were brutally honest with each other, brutally honest. Um, and so finally, she graduated, I want to say like 2019 or 2018. And so I was still in college. And by the time 2021 hits, and I want to tell her what's up. At that time, and while I was living with my parents, there were multiple, like Sundays, she would come over, we would eat, well, she would watch a lot of soccer. I have never been an athletic person. I can cheer, I can, woo. But understanding, um, is a challenge for me. And here in Texas, football is its own religion. Let's be honest, it is. And the sports, especially here, like kids grow up playing football, baseball, softball, soccer, the sports. I was never one of those kids. I tried being one of those kids through an organization that was with a church where basically all of the ones that didn't make it basically were accepted into this program gladly and with joy. It was fun to try and do basketball. Um, I mostly was able to play because I was taller at that time. In my early years, I just grew up so much quicker. And so for a little bit there, I was the tall one. I was the bigger kid, the big bone kid. And so I was great for blocking. As far as running goes down the court, that was fucking hard because I also was asthmatic. But I did the best that I could. And it was fun and it was a way to have friends. It was a way to do something. And they also, of course, they integrated like devotional time. And later down the line, it was also a coach. So that's kind of my background when it comes to athletics. I never made it into any public school athletic team. I was always on off season, but I tried. I really did. But that's why we're into the arts and entrepreneurism and basically a vampire. And I love staying inside. I will get 5 minutes of sun, and that's about it because then I will burn. Even though they say it's good to have like 10 to 15 minutes of sun, not me. That doesn't apply. Return to sender. So, so she would come over and she would like watch games, the sports, and I would either be studying or we would have a meal as a family. We would talk and all that, and it was like her second home. And then we would also during the weeks go to a local, um, young adult group and which basically they had like worship. They would teach from the Bible. And then there was also a lot of people there our age, and we were trying to make friends, especially leading up to 2020. And after that, we just wanted to make friends because where we were no longer in the nonprofit. So I stopped working at that nonprofit organization. I want to say like 2017, 2018. So around the time my friend um, graduated, I was done working at that nonprofit. So we saw each other less and less, but we would see each other on the weekends and when we would go to that young adult group. And so we were there for a while until I came out to her. So I am mid 20s at this point in time. Mid 20s, I can't remember specifically. And if I say a number, it's just gonna throw off the story. So for my brain, I was somewhere in my mid 20s. Because then my brain, if I say a certain number, it's gonna be like, no, this happened at that time. And I'm not about to sit here and argue with my internal self-criticism. That's not happening. So, um, so we had made friends with that young adult group. And so during this time, we have a group of friends that we hang out with, and they all come from different backgrounds. And from where I live, we get a lot of people from the Air Force. There is a Air Force, what is it called? Camp or location where they all go and work. I don't know the specific word, but you can drop it down in the comments and then I'll be like, yeah, that's right. Anyway, and we get in this town a lot of college students. So we had a mix of people coming in, leaving, so a quick turnaround of different faces. So at this time, the group of people we were hanging around felt really good, and we would mostly hang out like on the weekends if needed. But we were all pretty much in the same age range. And so, pardon me, around 2020, I was starting to feel the internal shift of like, I don't feel like I believe this way anymore, but I didn't have the words. I just felt like an internal shift of like, things are definitely changing, and I don't feel like I connect intellectually and like spiritually in this place and around this group of people. And with that church, I was feeling like this is no longer for me. And so finally, once I reached out to her and I was like, I mentioned something about wanting to go get a bite to eat. And so we go to a Mexican restaurant. And leading up to telling her, I had multiple conversations with my sister, with individuals that worked at the salon. There would be moments and pockets of time between their clients at the salon where I would be able to talk with them. We would meet in the kitchen, and that was like our place to connect, our place to chat, our place to hang, and sacred things were said there. And so those things remain private. But as far for me, I would share with close friends there who were more open-minded than me, who were further along the journey and more separated, more distanced from religious individuals. Um, talk meaning like how religious, especially Christian individuals talk, like that language, that language used where it would be like, oh, but God's got me. Oh, I'm trusting God. I'm trusting Jesus. Um, bless your heart. That sort of Southern talk irritates me now. That's for me to work on. And they didn't talk like that. The people I was around believed in spirituality and self-trust, self-discovery, self-love. They believed in, if that's for you, great. I'm for you for that. If you believe in the Jesus stuff, like, that's cool. I am happy for you. They never made me feel bad at that point in my life for believing the way that I did. It has vastly changed since then, but at the point in time, it was a safe space for me to explore outside of my religious beliefs and ask questions. And friends there had like spirit animal card decks, tarot cards, um, goddess cards, goddess, spirit goddess, or something like that. They were like female goddesses, so very feminine presenting on these cards, and they were beautiful. And then that was where I began exploring my spirituality and my connection to spirit, to my guides, to my ancestors. And it just began with looking at getting card readings from these, just a simple thing, a card. It just began there. I began being curious. I began asking questions. And I would be given tarot readings by friends and experience, pardon me, their services where they would also use these cards. And I was also introduced to sage and saging in that space, and Palo Santo, and crystals, and the power of the mind to remove things that were no longer serving me, especially in the thought space, especially in the imagination, and how that would come out through the way that I would speak. So a lot of change was going on in my mental space. Um, and so I would talk with them and we would talk about how to have conversations, the verbiage to use. We would talk about um, what to say, what do you want them to know, and what do you not want them to know. What are you comfortable with saying and receiving from what they may say or may not say? What do you want your relationship to look like with this friend moving forward? Um, and learning boundaries around this, my salon friends at that time. Learning boundaries was such a huge thing because growing up in a religious home and in the Christian church, when it came to boundaries, as a woman, there were none. It was only ever told to me what I should do, how I should do it, and that I shouldn't expect anything different outside of that. And the desire of wanting, like just simply, regardless of what I wanted, the feeling of wanting, I was separated from. Didn't know what it was, didn't know how to navigate that because I was taught all my feelings are wrong and bad and I can't trust them. And at the same time, to walk in fear. At that time, it was like, do not be afraid. So basically, all my emotions I wasn't supposed to experience. So I was very disconnected from my body in more ways than one. When it came to foods, when it came to sexual desires, when it came to the future and wanting stuff for the future, all I knew and understood was whatever was told to me through parents and friends within that religious community and from the elders, the pastors, even through the different churches that we went through. So I remember being told, like, you know who you are, and being prophesied over, being prayed over. Um, but I didn't. Looking back, I did not know who I was. But what they were saying, what their interpretation was, from what I can understand looking back, is this very blanket statement over me of like, you are God's child, you are protected, you are the head and not the tail. But I was so far removed from my emotions, especially my body as a woman and how it works sexually and desires, because everything was all bad emotionally. It was all bad and wrong. The fuck? Anyway, so no, through that lens, I did not know who I was. It didn't make sense. And when it came to connecting spiritually outside of myself, I was just caught up in what was being played outside of me. The high emotional experience that would be presented through the stage, through what was said, through the music. It was all just a play. It wasn't by any means a place to tap in to my inside world because I had to be separated from that, right? So at this point in time, back to my dinner that I'm having with my friend, I invited her or she invited me, something we worked something out, and we go to a Mexican restaurant. And with all of this up to this point, there's a lot of internal shifts going on mentally, emotionally, in my gut, in my heart, in my mind, in my womb, in my uterus, through my cycle. I mean, everything is being changed. Everything. Not just my outside world, but everything's being changed inside because I'm becoming a new person. I'm embracing who I am as a lesbian, but I think I use the words with them bi because I just still felt this in between. Because there was like, but I've had these sexual experiences with men, but I don't like that. And I can sense, feel, beginning to understand that I want to be with a woman sexually and potentially even marriage. So that's where my feelings were at the time. And so the only language that I knew to use that a lot of you can probably resonate with is like, I'm bi? But it was this huge question mark, maybe like two question marks of like, that feels like the next safe thing in a way. Best safe self expression. So I go in to this Mexican restaurant with my friend and we order tacos. This place was a little bit newer to me, so the only thing that felt safe to eat was like shrimp tacos, but they also um, covered it in a lot of dairy, a lot of cheese, and I was lactose intolerant and still am. And so I felt really disappointed with my shrimp taco plate because it felt like there was no flavor since asking to remove the cheese. It was just plain shrimp. Anyway, we will get in more of my foodie inner self, my foodie self, in another conversation. So finally, we are into our taco meals. And around us, also, I should mention there are like, of course, there are sports being played through big TVs all around us at every corner. Yeah, in literally every corner. And she's the type of person who has played all the sports and she played soccer at a really high level and even played through college. And I believe she got like those scholarships. I obviously don't know specificities when it comes to sports, but for the best of my ability of what I know up to this point, is that she was able to have school basically paid for because she played soccer and she was really good. They were very, very good. And at this point in her life, she's playing soccer for fun through adult groups around the city and whatever that looks like. I don't know, but she was still playing. And I believe at this point she was thinking about trying out for the FIFA team. Again, I don't know those specificities, but I do know FIFA, and I know that's important, and I know that's huge and that's big. So she had a really big goal that she was working towards at this point. Um, and so it's just her and we're at this Mexican restaurant, and I finally feel the guts and the energy to tell her. And to be honest, to be vulnerable, and to step out into showing my true self that I was also still discovering. So it was a challenging moment that I was trying to meet that challenge with as much love, compassion, and comfort with myself in that moment because I wasn't sure what was going to come at me. I was afraid. I can remember just sitting there back in that moment of knowing that she did grow up as a pastor's child. Um, I believe Baptist, and I know that she had a strong relationship with her connection to God, Jesus, and within Christianity. And it was very important to her. And she felt very safe, I want to say. Safety in regards to like, this is what I understand, this is what I believe, this is what is comfortable for me, and I'm here, I'm in it. And I don't know what her journey was like leading up to that. Really, when it comes to Christianity, I only know parts, but at that point, she wasn't going to change her beliefs. And she believed at that point in time that marriage was only to be between a man and a woman, and that experiencing sex should only be between a man and a woman, was her belief at that time. And so I was really scared going into it. But I moved through it by breathing and by being present in the moment. So paying attention to what was around me and trying to not move through it disconnected from my experience at that in that moment. I wanted to feel whatever was going to come to me, said to me, um, whatever behavior, whatever facial expressions, whatever was going to happen, I wanted to remember it. No matter how painful it could have been, would have been, I went into it wanting to still show love and compassion and understanding and hope to still have a friendship with her after the conversation. So I I start to say whatever comes out my mouth. I think I started with like, "Hey, um, I want to tell you something, but I'm also fighting with, struggling with the TVs around me as a distraction, as all of them are playing sports. And remember that she's a sports person and she loves the sport. She lives for soccer. And so I was in competition with that. So finally, I have her attention and I say something along the lines of this. Like, hey, I have something I want to tell you. Um, and I'm really nervous, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. And then I began to say something along the lines of like, I have come to the understanding that I resonate more with being bi. I might be lesbian, but right now I feel more like I am bi. And I want you to know that this is who I am. This is how I am moving forward. And I'm open to hearing what you have to say, but it's not going to change who I am and who I am becoming. So I say it something like that. And I'm watching her and I'm paying attention to her. And so as I begin to say, like, I'm bi, like, I have eyes. I have her eyes. They are on me. I'm uncomfortable, but I'm still saying the thing. I'm pretty sure I tried to, like, have my hand connected to my belly so I could feel my breath. So it would bring me back to the moment and to help me move through the fear of the moment. And probably took some drinks of sweet tea in between or water and moved through it with as much love, compassion, and as much safety as I could give myself in that moment. Because I am in a public place and I am in Texas. I am in West Texas. And so I was still fearful of people and what they would hear around me. I didn't know what other people would do. Didn't know if I was going to cry. Didn't know if I was going to get red in the face. So I'm also aware of what's going on outside of me. If I were to choose differently or to do it over, I would have chosen to do it in a more private place because that would have suited me better at that time than a very public place like that to be very vulnerable. And so, um, she just kind of takes a moment to hear me and pause. And from the best of my remembrance, it was just like an okay. This is new. I wasn't expecting this. I'm assuming, and I can only assume at this point, and like a reaction of like, I didn't receive anger. I didn't receive like a a busting out angry. I didn't receive hands. I didn't receive smacks. Thank goodness. She wouldn't have anyway. That was nothing like her experience or personality. Her personality was like very loving, and she was the type of person to take time to think about something and what that meant for her and how she would move through that. But I also say hands because of my own fear in growing up where I would receive smacks like on the shoulder, or I did receive spankings as a child. So that was one of my fears coming up of like, is somebody going to hurt me as I say my truth? But she was the type of person who was soft. She had this soft kindness about her and a tenderness and an ability to hear, even though she has her own religious beliefs. She had an ability to do her best to see the other person for who they were. But in that moment, who I was in that moment and who I was becoming, it pushed up against her beliefs and it did challenge them. And so it was a moment for her to choose what she believed to be true for herself and how she was going to be in relationship with me moving forward. And I don't know what her internal world was going, what I was saying, or what it was like, or what her experience was in her body at that point in time. But I do know that she was the type of person to hear, to hear, not hear and listen to speak over or to speak at or to speak against. But she was the type of person to do her best to see the different parts, question what challenged her, and then come back to what was true for her. And so, in that moment, moving forward, her one of her responses to me was through her facial expressions, number one. And two, I remember her saying something along the lines of like, well, have you looked it up in the Bible? Have you like dug or researched into that? Like, what does that say? Um, and again, she's coming from a place of questioning, but she also has this religious upbringing. And so she's being really challenged in this moment, as I am in being vulnerable in this way. And I think I said something along the lines of like, yes, but it was also a no, because I never dove into the Bible to see what it had to say, because I felt like, with up to my experience at that point, that I knew enough that God would love me regardless for who I was in that moment. And with the people around me that helped cultivate this self understanding as I was in self discovery, that it's okay to question and it's okay to move forward not knowing fully. And it's okay. They didn't say it, but they showed it. They showed me that it was okay to not believe this way anymore through this religious belief. And so the conversation after saying that just kind of went dull, dull in a sense of like we weren't in conversation. We were both in a moment of thinking about what just happened. But I could tell I was losing her attention for whatever the reason was for her, but I was losing her attention and her behavior began to be more avoidant as she was just watching what was on the TV. I don't know what was going on the TV because they were, most of them were behind me. There was only one in the corner that I could see off of my right eye, but I wasn't paying attention to it because I was so much in a moment of feeling scared of having to move through this very vulnerable thing that my focus was very much here's my plate of food, here's my drink, and I'm just trying to regulate my body inside. I'm not trying to pay attention to what's going on outside of me, only when the waiter comes to ask if we're okay. That's the only moment where I step outside of myself and am aware of what's going outside of me, outside of the table. So she's in this moment of paying attention to what's going on outside the table, what's going on outside of her plate. And I'm very much in this moment of like paying attention to my food and trying to not cry because I then felt like a beginning moment, this defining moment between me and my friend that we are beginning to separate. We are becoming different people. I didn't know the words then, but I definitely felt it of this like trying to pull apart Play-Doh that have had two different colors kind of smushed together. And I could feel this separation beginning to take place because more and more experience, more situations that I experienced with her down the road began, not began, but continued that separation, continued that division where she's going more this way and I'm going more this way, but there's still a respect and a kindness and a compassion and a trying to understand the other person's experience, but it's very much challenging us individually. And so just this division is taking place. I wouldn't say like a divorce necessarily, because I feel like a divorce, when it comes to like contracts, is very much a drawing a line in the sand or like scissors, cutting away, splitting, or even like a destroying of a bridge in a relationship or like a destroying of a wall. This was more like a slow pulling away, a slow separation in a relationship as best friends. And our relationship was very not just deep, like not just being able to talk about deep things, especially when it came to the world of Christianity, but deep in a sense of like, I've been so honest with you, and I've been in this really rough place in my life, and you still saw me, and you still helped me. But when it came to my experience of saying, this is no longer who I am, I'm no longer a straight person, I am female, I no longer subscribe to the belief of being a straight individual. I am bi, and I was making my way towards understanding being a lesbian. And so, as the relationship moved on after that, or how things went after that, there began to be more moments of this defined separation and more of a definition of two individuals who disagree on this subject matter of one believes it should only be a man and a woman, marriage and sex, and another one believes that no, it can be between a man and a man, a woman and a woman, or more than that, whatever felt safe for a person. And I was beginning to feel more safe as a lesbian and becoming a lesbian. Becoming meaning um, internally allowing that to be my truth. So that's what I mean by becoming. There were multiple signs looking back where it's like, yeah, she's probably a lesbian. She's probably gay. Like kissing my dolls, um, wearing, what is that called? A lanyard. Nope, not a lanyard. It's the key. You can put it in the comments. The the hook thing on your pants that holds your keys. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. There were multiple times when I would just have my keys out on my pants because it felt comfortable. Um, Being very avoidant when other men became very interested in me, and it just like being a full body no, but I was disconnected from my body, so I didn't know, but it just kind of became like I was more avoidant with that person, with that man who showed interest in me. I became more distant. And again, I didn't have the words at that time, right? So in our relationship, there were times when we would come back to that conversation because we had more of a definition of what was our truth as individuals. So there was a moment where she was over for a Sunday meal and she comes into my room, and it's one of those energies on her face where I can tell we're about to have a hard conversation. And I was like either in the middle of studying or in the middle of wrapping it up. And I remember it being a Sunday, and she comes to talk to me, and we're circling back to the conversation about my sexuality. And she basically tells me that if you ever come on to me, we're done. We're no longer friends. And that that was her boundary. She was expressing her boundary to me. But in the same moment, that boundary hurt my feelings because even though internally I was even asking myself the question like, do I like my friend more? Do I not? Can I say that? Can I not? Is it okay to have feeling towards your friends? But what about their beliefs? And what if they say no? And How do I even say that? Is that okay to say? Like all these questions. And so being told that if you ever come on to me, we're done. I didn't want to lose that friendship. I didn't want to lose that relationship because that was one of the only, not just good things that were happening for me, but like one of my safe spaces that was becoming what felt like unsafe to be my full truth, sadly. But it's a very gray area. It is not black and white, but things were becoming more defined, more black and white answers for the best way to say it. And so for her, one of her boundaries that she was expressing towards me was we are never going to become anything more than friends. Know that now. But it was very stern, it was very straightforward, and it was kind of harsh to experience because I wasn't expecting that. And I felt like, well, I honestly don't remember what I said because it was a traumatic moment for me looking back at that moment later down the line. So I think I said something along the lines of like, I would never, okay, I understand. And then she walked away, went into the living room. I think she continued watching some kind of sports, whatever that was. And I remained in my room, um, and I became more numb. I know that now because looking back, I can't remember what happened those following moments, but I remember feeling hurt, and I carried that hurt for months later. Months. And so much so that I became more distant in the relationship and I really started to cut myself off from her because I was so traumatized that if I were to ever come onto her, that I would lose that friendship. So my subconscious just started like, okay, we're gonna shut it down now before we can even cause any harm. But I still caused harm regardless by not voicing how that was painful because I didn't know how to voice it at that time. I didn't feel safe enough to express my feelings because I very much was feeling this separateness and this separated friendship. It was becoming, we were becoming different people. We were growing and we were changing. And even my religious beliefs, I was deconstructing and I was becoming not a religious person anymore. And like that journey, I began simultaneously and unconsciously leaving the church because I didn't feel safe there anymore. Because an individual like me who resonated with being part of the alphabet community, the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, the rainbow community, the very colorful individuals, being part of Pride, gay pride, all of that. I was feeling more safe in that community as I began to allow myself to step into who I was and the internal acceptance of being part of the LGBTQ community. I felt more safe there than in the religious structures that I grew up in, than being in a church, than being even around those people. It was becoming very defined within myself that I no longer resonated with being a Christian. I no longer resonated with having a relationship with Jesus and God in the sense of Christianity. I no longer was believing that somebody came to save me. I was coming into the understanding that I could do a lot more for myself than believing in something outside of myself that was supposed to save me and that one day it would be better. I was coming into the understanding that I want better for my life now. I want the good for my life now. I want paradise on earth. I want where I live now to be my heaven. And I want and began to learn that I want to co-create my life with the universe to be of something flourishing, to be of something of service, to be of something of love and acceptance. Number one, of my full self, even as I continue to grow, evolve, and change. With acceptance of my body, especially growing up in the religious community as a woman, I was so disconnected because of what I was taught. And I've said that multiple times. So I was reconnecting with my body as a female, as a person who has a uterus, as a person who has a cycle. I was becoming more connected, and at the same time, I was being separated from my religious upbringing, from the church, from Christianity, from the Bible, and all that that system believes. And I was moving and becoming an individual that was self-loving, self-accepting, an artistic, a creative, an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a woman who wanted to provide financially for herself, because God forbid in the religious community, a woman provides. I was becoming a woman that could provide for herself financially. And at that time, I was the one paying for my health insurance. I was the one paying for my college. I was the one getting credit cards. And side note, women weren't allowed to get credit cards and be able to apply for one until, and you can even look this up, I want to say in the 70s. Finally, around that time, women were able to get a credit card. And I did that shit. I put myself through school. I got my own car. I paid for that. I paid for the gas. I paid for my meals. Even though I was living with my parents, they basically just gave me a roof over my head and dinner and some food and snack in the fridge and were there. They weren't necessarily completely present and active in my life, but they were around. They were around. But I was becoming like I was embracing my femininity and my masculinity while leaving Christianity and embracing my sexuality. I was embracing both parts. Maybe I felt like I embraced more of like my masculine side at that time than my feminine side. I feel like more now, and maybe even within the last year or two, I finally have been able to cultivate a healthier relationship with my feminine side, with the side of me that's connected to my ancestors, my spirit guides, and those of my family members that have passed on recently. I I connect with my grandmothers, my great grandmothers who are on the other side, and we talk. I connect even with my grandfathers. We don't talk as much as my grandmas. I am in this space in my life where my spirituality has become a safe space to embrace multiple things, not like releasing and growing out of the belief of needing a savior and that somebody is supposed to save me. There have been so many times that I have had to hold myself, carry myself through really hard, not just emotional experiences, but just through hard times, economically, politically, within family dynamics, friend dynamics. And I have come into this understanding and this love, soft love within myself that I am with me. I will continue to be with me. I will die in this body, and I am living in this body, so I'm going to treat this body right. I'm going to take care of myself. And I began to allow myself to take care of myself by having checkups with the doctor, OB-GYN, um, just general health, not just going to urgent care when I need an antibiotic because I'm sick, but chiropractic care, um, massages, and getting those on a frequent basis, uh, doing my nails has been such a beautiful way for me to embrace my feminine side. There are multiple ways that I actively am more masculine than feminine. And those show up, and this is so stereotypical for lesbians, is fixing shit. My God, when I got my toolbox, I felt so much joy inside. I was like, fuck yeah, I can fix anything. And that kind of belief is such a beautiful, rewarding belief to have. And I I have this natural ability to be able to put things on walls and they just work. I don't have to like hammer a bunch of holes in the wall. It's just like one and done. One and done. Um, and being able to, like I have mentioned before, meeting with a counselor. I am taking care of my mental health because my family has a history of people following through with suicide and suicide ideations, those are those are there are differences between those things. Um, on my dad's side and my mom's side, we have a history of suicide, unfortunately. So I am making sure I am taking care of myself with counselors, psychiatry, medication as needed. Um, and not being afraid when I notice something off within my body, I go get it checked out. Um, so I'm taking care of my body's health. There have been times in my life where I have been really good at eating healthy and getting in good movement. Since this last year or so, that part of my life has really changed. And as I have come into the understanding that I am an individual that deals with chronic illness because of trauma and because of other medical challenges I am facing, like chronic migraine and even these lights that help you to see me so I don't get completely washed out, are actually really triggering. And understanding things that bother me, audio or like sound stuff, some stuff bothers me, lights, even beginning a deeper understanding and research into asking the question and getting those questions answered if I'm an individual on the neurodivergent spectrum. I have sisters who are, but I don't know. So I'm allowing myself to ask those questions and get answers. And as a woman in her 30s now, as a female, as a single individual, being able to follow through on those things is really powerful and is very healing for my inner child. And being able to see myself follow through on my own needs and not waiting for somebody else to come around to have enough money to take care of me. Like, I am taking care of me. And that is my continual reminder and mantra as I move forward in life. And it has taken a lot of work to get here. I'm not just talking outside, what you can see work, but internal work within myself, within my belief system, with how I carry myself, what I believe about myself, what I will not believe about myself. And that affects my outside world. And so, where I am now in life is one that co creates. I co create with my guides, my ancestors, and my family. Me and my sisters are very much active in each other's lives. We actually live under the same roof, and we have goals and dreams of continuing to do that on a larger scale when it comes to business, when it comes to dreaming about our home as our family grows. We want to continue doing life together, and that is our choice. We do life well together. We do life fun. It's fun being around my sisters. They really help me to embrace my childlikeness and the part of me that loves having fun and that loves experiencing joy and the pleasure of being able to enjoy everyday life with the people around me that I love and that I care about. So I hope, my hope is that wherever this finds you on your journey, at whatever age, stage in life that you're at, in whatever part of your journey that you are on, that maybe this inspired you, maybe this helped you open your understanding and experience to be different. If you are like me and you are understanding that you are part of the alphabet club, I hope that this also helps you in whatever way it does. And even to believing for more and better for yourself, even if you're not part of the alphabet club, I hope that this gives you an expansion into your belief system, especially for those that are, how do we say, more religious and more on the conservative side. If you are open to hearing other people's journeys without judgment, you are a lot further along than other people out here. You're a lot further along. Now, I think we're going to put a pin in it with the story there. There's more to share, but we'll come back to it. But I feel like at this point, that's part two. I think that this wraps up part two really well. And soon my sisters will be on these this series. We're just going to call it a series at this point. And they'll be on eventually. Can't think of anything else. Keep following, like, subscribe, follow. Um, and I appreciate you for listening to my journey. And I'm sending you love and support. And I look forward to chatting with y'all in the comments. Anything else? I think that's all for now. So thank you much for listening and hearing what I had to say and sending you love, sending you kindness, and we'll chat soon. Bye for now.